Hi, I'm Ann Maxwell from Well Tended, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the use of proactive strategies versus reactive strategies. And maybe we can start by just reminding ourselves, what do we mean by proactive versus reactive? When there's a behavior that we want to address, whatever the behavior is, it could be a child having a tantrum, it could be a child verbally refusing to do something, it could be a child maybe showing frustration with aggression, maybe throwing things. So whatever the challenge, whatever the behavior issue is, we can look at it in terms of proactive strategies, that is, things that we can do before the behavior happens, and reactive strategies, things we do once the behavior has happened. And it's not about one or the other. I think sometimes people think, oh, you want to do everything proactive, just take care of it proactively, and if you end up seeing the behavior, you failed, you haven't done enough proactively. And that's really not the case. So if we look at proactive, another thing this is called is antecedent management, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to rearrange the events in the child's environment that are antecedents to or triggers for the behavior. So if we know that our child tends to get non-compliant when there's a transition happening and there's a lot of things going on, then maybe we try to decrease the stimuli in the environment. We try to turn the TV off. We try to have it quieter when we're about to present a transition. We're trying to, as I said, rearrange or structure the environment so the behavior of concern is less likely to happen, or if it happens, it's not as severe. And this is a very useful, effective way of mitigating many behaviors. Proactive. Okay, reactive is, as the name implies, and actually I don't like the name reactive because it sounds like, to me it doesn't sound like it's planned enough. It sounds like you're kind of impulsively reacting, and it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it shouldn't be that way. If you're using reactive strategies, then you have a plan in place, a well thought out plan. Ideally, you have a plan in place for what to do when the behavior happens. And we'll have subsequent videos to give more examples and more information about this. But for right now, we're contrasting proactive and reactive. And the main point I want to make is that one is not better than the other. We really want to use them. We want to use them both. There are times, I believe, when I think, go overboard with the use of proactive strategies. And it kind of makes me think sometimes of that we're thinking of the behaviors that our child has as it's like a landmine. It's like if there's a field where there's mines that are hidden, and we have to get from one side of the field to the other. And we want to avoid stepping on the mines because of the explosive response there is. Now, that might seem really dramatic, but I do tend to think of it that way because I think, sometimes feel very fearful about that explosive reaction that we're going to get from the child if the behavior occurs. So sometimes I think we do find ourselves tiptoeing around the behavior, doing things that we can to avoid it happening, and we lose an opportunity to teach what with consequences. So if you, this might sound familiar, if you've heard a parent say this or a professional say this, or if you yourself have said it, let's be honest, we've all said this at some point: don't upset him, or she's finally calm, let's let her do that, don't disturb her. Or you might think, if I take the toy away now, she'll tantrum, and I gotta make dinner, and I've gotta get her brother bathed. So it's kind of a lot of avoiding behaviors, which I totally understand. There are plenty of times when we simply have to do that. It's a practical necessity. If we're in a public place where we don't have the resources or the time or the place, the space to manage a behavior. And sometimes we're also just emotionally spent. We're tired. We don't have the inner resources and reserve to manage the behavior. So I'm sympathetic to the fact that we can't always just let the behavior happen and deal with it. But what we want to do is be careful that we're not overusing proactive and not, as I said, not letting the child learn by virtue of consequences. So just again, to kind of reiterate, if our child tends to tantrum when we here's an example, if we set a limit on the child's screen time and the child tends to tantrum, we drop the limit, or we kind of do a sleight of hand to distract our child while we remove the device, and we distract with this, we give them something else. We're, again, avoiding the problem behavior, but we're maybe losing an opportunity to teach where we could. So as I said, it's okay to do this sometimes, but when we confuse the avoidance of behaviors with what we call the mindful use of proactive strategies, then we're trading short-term peace for long-term problems. And we'll talk more in our next video about what do we mean by mindful use of proactive strategies? What is mindful? When do we want to use proactive strategies? And conversely, when should we not rearrange environments, let the behavior happen, and help the child deal with it, teach the child how to deal with it? So join us on our next videos. Thank you.